This is Maggie here, and I have the pleasure of meeting you virtually to learn a little bit about your tradition in Katak dance. Um, and we'll begin by perhaps you telling us, just to orient everyone, that Katak is one of several classical Indian dance forms. So that are all in the Indian subcontinent. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to this art form?
Absolutely. It's wonderful to be here with you as well. And yes, I always like to say that my sort of stumbling upon in some ways of Kathak was really my kismet, my destiny. I know that sounds a little strange, but it was very much right place, right time. I grew up in a small town in California. I danced all my life, but not Kathak. I didn't have exposure to the South Asian arts. And so I was 18 years old, had moved to San Francisco, going to San Francisco State, thought, let me continue with some dance classes. And this one happened to be an option. And I was lucky enough not just to get introduced to this very rich art form, but to quite literally have the course be taught by a world renowned master who I then, for almost 2 decades, continued to train with.
Yes, and that master, we hear about him on the East Coast here. Tell us his name and a little bit about him.
Of course. So his name is Pandit, being sort of the master, if you will, titling, and his name is Chitresh Das. He originally was from Kolkata, India, and he moved to the U.S. in 1970. Eventually, found himself on the West Coast, where I was one of many who, received his training, his teachings, his gift of knowledge, technique, all of that. He unfortunately passed in 2015, but up until, that very day was just performing and dancing, even at the age of 70. He had been very much part of these folk festivals, I believe performing at the Richmond Folk Festival, at Lowell as well. So it's quite an honor to be at a stage and on a stage that he once was.
That's beautiful. And these dance forms they're classical dance forms. And from my understanding, they're quite complex, both rhythmically and how you interact with musicians. So you are bringing with you to Lowell, I believe, is it four musicians? Tell us a little about their instrumentation. Two are vocalists, one is a tabla player, and the other a violin player. Now, and they are playing Hindustani repertoire. Is that
That's
right?
correct. Kathak is a classical form originating in North India, and we have two major styles of music. There's Hindustani, which is North Indian classical, and Carnatic, which is South Indian. So Kathak therefore follows the Hindustani structure.
Okay, and from what we will see you dancing on stage with them seated to the side, playing. What's fascinating is the interaction between the dancer and the musicians. I would love if you would talk a little bit about that relationship in this particular tradition.
Happy to. I think it's one of the most unique and dynamic components, I think, for us as performers, and yes, we hope for the audience. And really, what that is it's rooted in rhythmic cycles, where as we move from one section of the performance to another, we will have predetermined sort of the rhythmic cycle, say of 16 beats, of 14 beats. And so each musician, whether instrumentalist or vocalist, is acting it sometimes as a timekeeper through their respective execution of their skill set. And then we're laying on top of that compositions. Often, because this is a dance performance, those compositions are rooted in dance syllables and movement technique, where you will hear the recitation of those syllables, sometimes even by me at first. And again, the music is ever present, again, more as a timekeeping mechanism. Then, when I actually move back to center stage to dance it, you'll hear that recitation through one of those vocalists, as well as the tabla player having translated those syllables to strokes that are played therefore on the tabla. And sometimes we even have a melodic accompaniment where whether it's the violinist having a appropriate to that same movement rhetoric, and or the vocalist singing the notes that might go well with that movement. So some of it is very structured and kind of planned out, and yet by the sheer nature of it being live, it's anything can happen. And yet there are also components where it is improvised. So it's sort of like we're working in a framework, but whether we do what we call Saval Jawab, or more commonly known as call and response. So sometimes it's trading back and forth in that way, again, in different measures of time. And those moments might be improvised, even though the measure of time is fixed. So it's sort of combining all of those things. And I will say that in addition to all of the dynamic interplay, there's also, the music brings a great deal of emotional tone to what I'm doing. Kathak itself comes from the word katha, which means to tell stories. So, like many of the forms of South Asia, it is a storytelling form. So, in addition to the rhythm, the rhythmic vigor, if you will, there are sort of nuanced, expressive elements, often taken either from song or stories and telling those through dance. And you can imagine how the music adds to that. And what I really love in my relationships with these collaborators and many of the musical artists is their ability to just notice the detail and add just that subtle extra something to add to that emotion that we're trying to deliver in that moment.
That's very helpful. Is that what's the abinaya? Is that the phrase for facial expressions?
Abhinaya exactly means expression, yes.
Okay. Okay. You apparently. Oh, well, here's one thing because in the Lowell Festival in years past, I believe we've had a Kathak dancer, but we've had Bharatanatyam, Odissi. Can you give the people, the audience, a sense of what distinguishes Kathak dance from these other classical dance forms?
Sure. So I've never trained in any of the other forms to be able to speak really deeply about the technique that exists there. But even from a very sort of peripheral observational perspective, you will see the difference is often even in, again, just the base of form. Some of the forms are a little bit more lowered in stance and such. Kathak, we tend to be a little bit more extended. A lot of footwork exists in all of these forms. There's said to be 8 classically recognized forms. But again, each one, you'll see so many similarities of footwork, of hand positions. We call those hastaks or mudras, but they'll look a little different. And if you ask me some of the sort of qualities of Kathak that make it at least what I believe to be uniquely what it is, there is this very interesting combination of subtlety and yet sort of that punch, that refinement of a sharp stance, but then it followed with a real subtle melting of the use of the neck, the eyebrows. So you have a lot of this contrast happening throughout. And so, again, a lot of rhythmic footwork, but then also a great amount of fluidity and grace in this particular style.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Oh, I believe you're going to be debuting a new piece. And by the way, you should probably also mention that you have a dance company, right? So tell us a little bit about this piece. Is it called Perseverance?
Yes.
Tell us.
Yes, ironically, we're even repurposing some of what we're building for this show, which will be happening in the San Francisco Bay Area. We'll be even doing some of those pieces at the festival as solo pieces. So the production we have coming up in September, which will take place here in the San Francisco Bay Area, it's called Sabit Kadam, loosely translated as Perseverance. And that will be a performance that does include myself. Our dance company will have 10 dancers, of which I'm the artistic director and choreographer for. And then we have some guest artists as well. We have a Indian contemporary company by the name of Ishami Dance Company. And so they're really bringing different styles of the South Asian forms, some influences of classical, some folk, some, and we even have one live musician. Majority of that show will be done to pre-recorded music, but we do have a guest artist who will be joining us live, and his name is Rizvan Jagani, and he plays the viola. And so that will be a first for us to work with him, and he'll be joining us with some unique elements. And even in some of the pieces, our dancers will actually be singing as well.
Great.
And
Can
really,
you?
I should say, I guess that the intention behind that show, Perseverance, is really about exploring sort of the unique elements of the politics of identity. And as a case study, looking at it through the lens of art and artists in Pakistan, since I do get to do a lot of work there, I have become much more aware of the dynamics over many decades that has really oppressed art and artists, even though there is a great degree of talent, skill, knowledge, potential. But for various reasons, it has been suppressed. And again, I say case study because I believe that when we look at these concepts of politics of identity, this is something that we're seeing consciously or not, just exist in so many parts of the world, including the US. What does it mean to have your identity forced upon you as a result of forced migration, human displacement, violence, racism, you name it, religion? And so thematically, that's the overarching topic, but we're using almost as a tribute to those artists who I have felt very moved and inspired by, that I believe have persevered in very adverse sort of environments. So that's the
Yes,
intention of the show.
that's great. I mean, that's such a common theme in traditional communities that are oppressed, and then they're, you think about French Canadian not being able to speak their language in New
Mm-hmm.
England, or
Right,
I mean,
right.
all over this kind of thing. And so your very own
Exactly.
family, I mean, just tell us that your parents, right, about when partition came and
Yeah.
India and Pakistan was separated. Yes.
Exactly. Well, so yes, my parents were born in Bombay 2 years, or excuse me, 1 year prior to partition. They were born in 46. Partition happened in 47. In 48, so they were just babies still, their families chose to move to Pakistan. So they grew up there. They ended up meeting in college, marrying, eventually moving to the States. They were not in a situation, thankfully, where they were forced to flee India. There was no violence that occurred as a
Mm-hmm.
result of that, but there were many, many, many others. To date, um, partition was essentially, and this was the separation of India into, at that time, India and Pakistan, and then eventually East Pakistan became, as we know, since 1971, Bangladesh. And this was based on religious divide, and
Mm-hmm.
there was, I believe, reports and data shows that there were about 15 million people displaced as a result of partition. And the next number has a spread of between 1 and 3 million. And I know that's a huge spread, but even if you take the baseline of one, as far as deaths, 1 million deaths as a result of forced migration due to partition. And again, that's even how we're starting our show, because it was this forced migration that, just imagine you're having to flee your home, and then say, I'm just taking it from the lens of Pakistanis, however you felt about the topic, you now have to sort of create a new identity, but all you've known is this shared one. And even if you want to take pride in that new identity, does that mean you don't get to hold on to anything that you might have even contributed to? And I say that again through the artistic perspective. And if you notice, I am very intentional, therefore, with Kathak as saying it's classical dance of South Asia. I fully recognize that it originated in North India, and will always credit it as such. But if we take the city of Lahore, which is in present day Pakistan, Kathak, that was one of the cities where Kathak evolved and flourished significantly. So if we're to look at present day dynamics, that includes Pakistan. And right, so to me, if we can't claim and reclaim that we share these art forms, that we share our food, and I can't just say Indian and have people in Pakistan still feel like it's theirs, or people in
Yeah.
India to not get offended when I say it's Pakistani, then let's use this collective term of South Asian. That's
South
my
Asian dance.
intention.
And that, yes, thank you for explaining that. And is this a big part of your life, like claiming, reconnecting to this heritage that, I mean, you were born here, right?
Hmm.
You were born in
I
California.
was,
So
yes,
does
born
that,
and raised in California.
right, right. So that must be a wonderful way to reconnect with your lineage
Absolutely.
through art.
It has been, no question. And I think at a certain point, too, I consciously realized the responsibility that I have. Once I committed to this art form being such obviously a big part of my life, which of now I've been doing for almost 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
you realize that you're not just a, cultural bearer in your sort of locale, but you can also be a bridge builder. And that's been something that I have really, I don't claim to be the end all and be all and or the know it all in what I do, but in whatever way that I can to even bridge the divide between among South Asians with this
Yeah.
art form as the medium to help to shed light on those in Pakistan who are doing such brilliant work through the arts
Mm-hmm.
when most of what we see and hear about Pakistan is definitely negative. Um, and I also have to recognize as an American, I have privileges to
Mm-hmm.
dance and to be, yes, a Pakistani American Muslim woman, and yet to still have the support and encouragement since day one from my family. That is
Yeah.
also a very privileged place to be. And so, whatever I can do with that is,
Mm-hmm.
it's absolutely my responsibility and my honor.
Well, we so look forward to having you at this year's Lowell Folk Festival.
I
Anything
can't
last words you would
wait.
like to share with people that they might not know about what to expect?
I think just come, enjoy, soak it in, observe, interact in any and all ways that you can. Don't hesitate to linger after a performance and ask us questions. I can comfortably speak on behalf of all of the artists that I'll be sharing the stage with that we really believe so deeply in our art form as a way to connect. And we love when we pique that curiosity. So we hope, as we say, we hope to entertain, educate, and inspire you in any and all ways possible.
Well, thank you, Farah, Yasmeen Sheikh. We look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Thank you so very much.
Okay.